This episode of XIV Reborn is brought to you by Audible. For a free 30-day trial, head on over to audible.com/gamebreaker. Free month and a free book. Oh yeah.
Gamebreaker TV.
Hello, Internet, and welcome to XIV Reborn, the Final Fantasy podcast here on Gamebreaker TV, episode 32 for April 1st, 2014. And I promise, no more April Fool's jokes. At least from us. At least from us. On today's show, it's time for our Ultimate Patch 2.2 review, and will the real Yoshi P please stand up? But first, you know him, you love him. He's here every week with me, Mr. Happy Michael Poveromo. Mr. Happy Brand, how are you, sir?
Doing good. Took all that hair on my head, put it on my face, just to honor him. There you go.
Just to give a little bit of honor.
You know they usually call this like 5 o'clock shadow. I call it patch 2.1 shadow.
Well, you and the Free Company have been busy. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. It is one of the items to review. We're going to do this just like we did last time, chat. We're going to break it down by section, give a score from 1 to 10 for each section. Totally arbitrary score from two fanboys. Deal with it. And if you want to give your score at home, throw them in chat. We'll read your comments about each section and your scores as we go. So, without further ado, here we go with the Ultimate 2.2 review. So here's the rules. We did it for 2.1. Same rules for 2.2. We'll chat about them. You give them your score, and we'll be reading them as we go along. So let's get to it. You know what? Why don't we start, Mr. Happy, with probably the biggest item that most players have, who have been playing since launch or since 2.1, have already experienced, and we'll talk about the story extension piece. Now, no spoilers. Yeah. No spoilers for those that maybe haven't finished yet, although there's not too many spoilers in this one. But
No.
Overall thoughts on the whole story extension, 19 quests leading up to, of course, Leviathan hard mode.
Spoiler? No, just kidding. But yeah, it's just called Through the Maelstrom. That's a coincidence. But I actually liked it better than 2.1's. 2.1's, I felt like I got a cutscene at the very beginning, and I didn't get another cutscene until the very end. And granted, if you watched whatever cutscenes there were, it was only a few hours. There wasn't anything like going back and doing the little 15 guild tests or anything like that. So overall, I felt like there was more of an emphasis on introducing this new character that they've been talking about for so long and really nailing down, you know, what they're doing here, what the Domans are doing here. Like, it was great for me.
Yeah, I'm kind of lukewarm about it, but it's not that that's bad. It's that I realize they're setting some things up. You know,
Yeah.
there really wasn't. If you could pull your mic closer, that'd be great. You sound a little dim.
Yeah, I got it.
There we go. They're setting things up, not only with the Domans, but also with a potential new race, potential new classes and jobs. They're setting things up for 2.3, 2.4, 2.5, and beyond on into the expansion. That's not to say the story was bad. But I just didn't feel really engaged in it. I felt like I was just watching some things play out that I would need to know later on. But the inclusion of a tease, and we speculated pre-patch 2.2, so we'll just let that speculation sit. I don't want to talk about it because we may have, you and I and most people watching this show probably have a little more insight as to what's being teased here. But it was cool that potentially 2 classes or jobs were teased by the end of this story. That was pretty cool, I thought.
Yeah, and they go along with something that Yoshi P said a long time ago. I don't want to spoil what it was particularly, but he one of those 2 jobs that was spoiled, actually both of them, he's spoken about and said he felt that the game needs them as one of the priority jobs coming into the game. So alongside Musketeer, which he said they just have to do because it's already there. So yeah, I'm always up for speculation, but I'm not one to jump on that until we have things set in stone.
Yeah, and if you missed our speculation on last week's show, go check it out. It was last week and the week before. We kind of touched on both of them, on just based on the picture of Yaguri, what job or class she might be representing, and then we found out a little more about what we assumed one character already was. So good stuff, good stuff. As part of this section, the whole story, we should probably talk about the Leviathan hard mode fight itself, because that is a necessity as part of the story building up here. Mechanics, difficulty, the whole fight kind of shook out for me as, well, that was cool to watch. I mean, to me, I honestly didn't feel it had any right being called a hard mode. Now, we knew it wasn't going to be ridiculously hard. Yoshi P had said in advance, if you go in with a group of people, you know, it's only going to take a couple of times, maybe that, to figure out the mechanics and down it. But literally, my first time through there to complete the story, I duty finder queued it with a pug and cleared it the first time. Nobody died during the entire fight. Some fun mechanics. A fun fight. I would do it again. You know, it's not like not like the original King Moggle where I did it once just to do it and I never went back. I would do Leviathan hard mode again, but to me it really didn't resonate as a hard mode given what we've seen with Garuda, Ifrit, and Titan.
Yeah, and I think we've seen this coming in with the changes they made to Moggle hard mode back in the day. If you did it when it first came out in 2.1, it felt like a hard mode. When they changed it later, it felt kind of like Leviathan hard mode did, where you'd be pretty hard-pressed to not beat it unless you just started straight ignoring what was going on and just did whatever you wanted. So I think we should stop calling them hard modes. I think they've already stopped. They just called it the War Leader. They left the hard part out of it. I think they understand that there's no point in calling it a hard mode, that we're just conditioned to because it's an 8-man version of the fights the way that the original main story put us through them. I think it's safe to just start calling them story mode bosses.
Yeah, and we're going to talk more about this when we get to the dungeons themselves, the 2 hard mode dungeons and the Lost City of Amdapor. I think the Square Enix is probably running into the trouble right now of actually tuning these so that they are difficult, given the gear that's already out there in the game that a lot of people have. There's a bit of a challenge to make it accessible to people that maybe jumped in 2.1 and have not farmed any Allagan or Myth gear, while also making it somewhat challenging for people like you know, I'm running around I-90. So complete I-90 is Black Mage, and it's hard to tune the fight both ways to cater to both. So I give them a little bit of slack. It's a story mode thing. It was a cool fight overall. In the extreme mode, we do have some one-shot mechanics that I speculated about on previous shows. So, yeah, fun stuff. Now, did the story segment feel longer to you than patch 2.1's? I'm not sure if
not
it felt...
2.5 times longer.
Yeah, it didn't feel that long. It felt more like running around to me.
I say there are 2.5 times more cutscenes than there was back in 2.1.
I agree, and a lot of them had voice.
Yes, a lot
of
them.
We mentioned, could they be doing it because the trailer had a lot of voice in it, and apparently they did.
They voiced a lot of weird things in this patch. Like, just they threw voices in for characters in places I didn't expect them to throw in voices for. Just really simple things. Even Gilgamesh had a voice, which I didn't expect at all. I thought, just like Hildebrand, we were going to leave him just whatever, his voice is however you want it to sound. But
Chat seems to be giving this overall story mode, including the hard mode Leviathan fight, around a 7. I tend to agree. To me, it did its job. It continued the story. It set up a lot for the future. I can see how people might view the overall story arc as a little bit of a disappointment because I think the story told in 2.1 was a little bit better. But to me, 2.1 was finishing off some story from launch, where 2.2 is now setting up story for the future. So I give it a little bit of leeway. I give it a 7. It was kind of average. I enjoyed it. I would do the hard mode fight again, but you know, it's not anything I'm screaming from the rooftops about.
Yeah, I give it a 7 out of 10, mostly because of what you've said, where it didn't... 2.1s, without spoiling anything, even though it's been quite a while, it's been 3 months now, without spoiling anything, it had sort of it had a conclusion, like, oh, this is what everything you've been doing up till now has led up to, and there's this character now, and this is his role, and it left it on a cliffhanger while being conclusive at the same time. I felt like that was the perfect balance. Also, Leviathan hard mode not having any drops was a little bit odd to me, although after I saw the patch notes, I kind of expected it.
Some in chat are giving it an 8 because there's no forced old dungeon like Sunken Temple in 2.1.
Or Guildhest.
Which I might be inclined to change my rating from a 7 to 8 based on that. It's something I
don't
hadn't
like the Sunken
considered.
Temple? They nerfed
I
it just
enjoyed
for
Sunken
you.
Temple. I don't have a problem running it. All right, so about a 7, maybe a little extra bonus points here and there for some oddball things. So, so what should we do next? Let's, you know what? Let's do Beast Tribe dailies. That should be real quick. You know, they did add new sections to the map in some cases. We speculated on that. I mean, the areas are obviously very small, and you kind of teleport to them. You don't actually walk into them. So that was kind of cool, being on boats and things like that. And I'm sure as the rep increases and you gain levels, that those areas are going to be expanded on a little bit, like the island where you do the Sahagan crab quests, and those are probably going to balloon out a little bit, which is nice. Not a whole lot to talk about, though. I mean, if you did the dailies in patch 2.1, it's kind of the same stuff in a different area, right?
Yeah, I mean, I did appreciate that they had specific areas that were new. One thing I didn't like about 2.1's daily specifically was running through the areas that were already in the game, the Amalja and the Sylphland areas, specifically the Sylphland areas. I have a great distaste for that place. Granted, I also didn't finish my Sylphland reputation, so I guess that kind of shows. I appreciated, in some way, trying to separate these tasks from just going in and killing enemies. Like, more along the lines of supporting the beast tribes as they try to reach diplomatic solutions, as opposed to just appeasing to them so that they're on your side, specifically.
Davarok from chat is saying 10 out of 10 because didn't have to do any fates as part of dailies yet. Well, you got lucky. Because right in the first level, the Sahagan, you'll be doing Sharknado, just as an example. The fates are definitely in there.
I will say this, and I shouldn't say this early, but while you're Atma farming, keep in mind which fates you're doing, because a lot of them are probably going to be dropping daily items.
Yep. One thing we should mention here about the dailies is it is a really, really quick way to gather up venture chips.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, I know there's multiple ways to get these, right? But you're getting 5 per daily, and you're doing 6 dailies, so you're farming 3 or 30 each time you do the dailies, if you do them every single
5?
day.
I didn't get 5.
You haven't been getting 5?
I got 1.
You're getting 1? I've gotten anywhere from 1 through 5.
Okay, well, if you can get 1 through 5, that makes sense. I've gotten 1 every single time, so I got bad RNG.
Maybe I'm looking at it wrong. Maybe I was looking at the tombstones.
That's very possible. But regardless, it is still...
Even if it's still 1, you're farming 6 rather than
6
coughing
a
up
day.
seals or anything for them.
Especially
with the
if you're
ventures
doing field.
costing 1 to 2...
Yeah.
And a max of 4 retainers if you were stupid and paid... I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't say that. If you voted with your wallet in favor of paying for retainers. So, yeah, maybe I'm misreading my tooltip then. But, yeah, it's the easiest way to farm them up, and it's free, and you're getting gil, and you're doing the dailies. It's by far the most profitable way to get the venture chips.
Yeah. And they're quicker than the other ones in my opinion thus far. They're
at least the
quicker.
first one. At least the first one.
Yeah, unless you're doing the one of the Fate ones like Sharknado, which spawns very often and is very quick to clear. I'd say that these feel less of a task even than the 2.1 ones. It's like, oh, go to this area that we've already predestined to you, do this.
Yeah, but see, 2.1 started easy like this too, and then as you gained rep,
but the
fields moved deeper and deeper in, right?
The areas for 2.1 sucked. Even if you only just went into the first part of Sylphlands, you already hated the place. Just there's so many enemies, and they're constantly in your face, and all the fates there are really annoying, and these fates aren't as annoying. Granted, I don't know how I don't aggro half of those Sahagins when I'm going through that area, because they litter the place.
Do you think this kind of forces people to do dailies almost, if you have any intention of doing the retainers, the ventures?
No, because you got plenty of seals for all those fates you'll be doing to buy the venture chips anyway.
Oh, let's not talk about that. Let's not. All right, score for the Beast Tribe dailies. I went first last time, so you can go first this time.
You know what? They were quicker. They have decent rewards. I was a little disappointed to see shards were being removed from them, but the venture chips make up for it because you can get some crazy good items from the venture chips, and it frees you up to do things with Grand Company seals, like buy the old item level 70 stuff, which still sell for a moderate amount since they come from Grand Company seals. I'll give it a 7.5 out of 10. Just 2.5 points off because they're still dailies and they're still there.
I don't mind dailies. I find these ones fun, and there's a bomb chair. 10 out of 10 from me.
There you go, bomb chair. Yeah, the Alps drops points for me too. I don't like that.
Well, since we mentioned them, let's keep going on the retainers topic and the ventures topic. I gotta know, you, Mr. Legacy subscription, did you buy retainers?
Hell no, I didn't buy retainers. If I haven't filled the first 2, I don't care about getting 2 more ventures a day. I'm not paying $2 for 2 ventures a day, although it would probably justify the cost at that point. No, I did not buy my 2 retainers. How about you? Did you buy your 2 retainers?
No, get that.
I know you were so excited to hop on that train. Pull out your wallet for that.
I was so angry. Yeah, I was QQing all over the place. Make it rain, Mr. Happy. So retainer ventures, once I started doing a couple of them, I realized these are kind of a really limited audience type thing. Because not only do you have to farm the chips to go and do it, but if you're not into leveling those other classes yourself, then what you can do with the retainer is extremely limited since they're bound by your corresponding level. So you mentioned some of the rewards getting nuts, though. I could see that actually being an incentive to go and level a class you really don't want to level, just because there's some ridiculous retainer rewards out there.
There are. I mean, the funniest one I've seen so far is a retainer came back with a roof for a house. I was, where did you come back with that? And also, some of them have been pulling up, they have been pulling up Darklight gear, have been pulling up some of the new dungeon gear, which is good for the vanity system. Later on, you can get them to farm things that still make important items, like pudding flesh or outgoat horns. You can get certain housing items. You get items that you find from the treasure hunts. Apparently, treasure hunts have even been making a resurgence this patch, and actually
there's items that are only available this way too, according to Yoshi P.
Yeah, so far people have been having a ton of fun just waiting to see what I got an HQ pot of honey. So
there you go. At worst, hey, it's a decent place to store some gear and get it out of your inventory if you need to.
Oh yeah,
just throw it on your retainer. I'm torn on this one a little bit because I'm not going to do too much of it, but that's because I'm not really too deep into the crafting, because to me, up until recently, the crafting's almost been pointless economy-wise. It's nice to see some of that changing, but still I think we're a long way off from crafting being a really, really good piece of the economy. I give Retainer Ventures a 5 out of 10, mainly because I'm not going to do it all that much, and I would have given it a 7, but if you want to pay, you can do more than I can, which is bullshit. So I'm going to knock it down 2 more points and give it a 5 out of 10.
1 point for each retainer that they bought. Anyway. I mean, the thing is with me is there's almost no interaction here. Even if you are participating in the content, you are spending less than 30 seconds a day on it. And most people are just going out and setting them out for 18 hours so they don't have to check back every hour.
And if you're a big crafter or gatherer, this probably scores a lot higher than I'm scoring it.
Yeah, and there are some, like I said, there are some items that you can get from this that are just unbelievably ridiculous. At the very least, it's fun to see what they come back with, but very little involvement. It's not really much of something to do. It's just something that's, hey, my retainer is this level, and okay. So, 7 for me. I'll give it a 7 only because I'm not as bothered by the retainer things for you, because I haven't yet seen what those unique items are that you can only get from retainer ventures and how coveted they'll really be.
All right, let's talk dungeons. We'll move on to the dungeons. Now, first, I think we should break this down just a little bit, Happy. We'll give each of the 3 new dungeons its own score, and then kind of give it an overall dungeon score at the end as a whole new content piece. So first up, let's take the brand new Lost City of Amdapor, which on your video you still refer to it as Amdapor Township.
Yes, I do.
And it looks like you have a score already. It looks beautiful. Obviously, a big thing for a lot of Final Fantasy players, including us, is the music. And the music
Which
just
plays throughout the whole dungeon.
It plays from beginning to end. No, they're not going to go back and redo that for other dungeons, but they are going to keep that going forward. It almost lulls you to sleep, but it fits the vibe of the dungeon totally, I think.
Yeah, a destroyed civilization.
Yep.
Exactly. Just like walking through. It's almost like, since 10 HD just came out, it's almost like Xanarkand with a different theme, just walking through a completely destroyed civilization. Just calm, fitting music.
A lot of chat already throwing up scores that are 9 and 10 out of 10. I've even seen a 15 out of 10. I'm not really sure we're allowed to do that. It kind of screws with the average.
Extra credit.
I will say this, though. And we kind of thought this was going to be the way things were implemented a week or two ago. I was disappointed that mimics weren't as strong as they are historically. We kind of figured that was coming, though.
Yeah, unless they were going to be a boss, which would have been awesome.
Yeah, and every time I've gone in, the mimics are in the same place.
Yeah, that was a big thing for me. My first time going through there's a lot of chests that seem very conspicuously placed.
Yeah.
And they make you think, oh, this could be a mimic, especially after you've seen the trailer. But then you go through it a few times like, oh, well, the mimics are always in these spots.
It was really cool to see mimics, though, and I hope that we maybe see them later in a role more difficult, like we were used to seeing them in Final Fantasy. I don't know. That was my only real disappointment. Boss-wise,
yeah,
they nailed this. I mean, Square totally nailed this. I love all the bosses here. Let's go through them. Mechanics, starting at the first boss, the Gubu, who looks like Oogie Boogie from Nightmare Before Christmas, swallows people. I'm not sure if the mechanics are quite working at the
they're not
at the end of the fight, but
yeah.
I do like the mechanics. I thought it was a pretty cool fight. My healer let me die once in one run, and so I returned the favor.
You must have deserved it.
When she got eaten, I didn't DPS. I mean, we had a ton of fun. Love the first fight. Love it.
Yeah. It was. I mean, it's probably one of the better showings a Gubu has had specifically.
Agreed.
Gubus are never classically known for being these extremely unique fights. Looking at Wanderer's Palace, I feel like the Wanderer's Palace one could have just been a trash mob for all you know. It didn't really do anything special. Eating people seems to be a thing that they're going into the habit of doing, though. Since the old one used to suck you in, this one just actually swallows you. I was happy with it. A lot of debuffs. I feel like in Dungeons, Asuna is not totally. Healers aren't conditioned to Asuna as often or Leech as often, and that's a fight where you have to learn to be doing those kind of things. And I like those fights that encourage use of those things that maybe weren't as used before. So I like the fight.
Well, I think it's nice, and it is a little bit buggy, right? I mean, we already mentioned the mechanics, but I think it's nice that if the healer takes a more active role on the Asuna, then the healing becomes substantially less. Like, there's a valid reason for you to be doing other things besides healing, rather than just, you know what, I can overheal the hell out of this, let it tick, and not have to worry about it. I kind of like the trade-off there. It gives healers a little more to think about, rather than wait till, okay, cast. Wait, cast. Which this dungeon in I-90s can definitely become, because the damage is not all that powerful. So there is plenty of time for healers to just be sitting there waiting for damage. I think this is a nice little trade-off to keep healers busy too. Fast forward to the Diablos fight at the end. What did you think of the whole doors mechanic?
I thought that was a very clever thing that they did, especially because I had a friend who was identifying them by color, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to identify them by shape. And it's funny because I was looking at the shapes the first time I went in there. I'm like, I wonder what all the shapes are gone. Guys, I think we were supposed to remember what those were. I liked it. It was very gimmicky, but it was fun.
I don't know if I would like to see that, and some of Game Breaker Nation and I were discussing this, like, would we like to see that type of mechanic in a raid, like an 8 or a 24 person? I don't know if I would have been as cool with it in that situation. Simple. Yeah. I mean, they could make it a little more complex, but I thought it fit the fight. It totally worked. It was a neat little mechanic. You can run in there and have two people mark the doors, and when they close off and shuffle, the marks stay. So there's ways to strategically plan things. I thought it was a well-done fight. I was disappointed we didn't see Dark Messenger. Iconic ability.
It's weird that they named it.
Yeah.
Because that was Dark Messenger, but
it definitely was.
They used the Final Fantasy XI name, which was Ruinous Omen instead, which I just realized right this second that's what it was called on Final Fantasy XI.
Yeah, all in all, I got to go with most of chat and give Lost City a 10. I think they just nailed
Yeah.
it. There's some things like bugs that I would like to have
Second
fixed.
boss.
Yeah.
Second boss.
Yeah, big time. So maybe I should give it a 9 because there are a few things that need to be tweaked there, but I have confidence that those particular things will be fixed pretty quickly. So I'll give the dungeon a 10 with the reservation to make it a 9 4 episodes from now if the bugs aren't fixed.
Okay, yeah, by 2.25, it'll be
Right.
a 9 by then. There you go. I give it a 9. One thing, as much as I'm a Final Fantasy XI player and I love seeing these things, but I would have liked a little bit more originality on some of the enemies. I felt like I was walking through a Final Fantasy XI area throughout half of the fight. I appreciated the work on some enemies like the Hekdais, which weren't just complete carbon copies. But having played, I would have liked to have seen more original models from everything, and not just what looked like to me.
I loved the nod to Final Fantasy XI there with the damselfly. I love that whole vibe that you got, because if you never played 11, then you walked in and it was a cool dungeon, right? If you played 11 religiously like you and I did, then you walked in and it was a cool dungeon with some cool nods to stuff that you had done in the past. I totally dug that vibe. The only disappointing mob thing I had was the mimic stuff.
Mimics, yeah. No, I mean, for me, I like it in small doses, but there was too much of it at once for me in there. I would have preferred to see more. Like, the gremlins were one enemy that they weren't visually appealing, but I did appreciate it was something that was more unique to Final Fantasy XIV's world specifically. Though I didn't recognize that specific model from the previous Final Fantasies, especially not 11. So I took a point off just for that. Also, I still wish that the music for the place would have played throughout the bosses as well. I just feel like that you can't take that music away. It just sets the vibe. Just leave it the whole way. If you want to make a different music for the last boss, go right ahead. But don't, as long as you're not using the same old music. But
all right, I give it a 10.
9.
You give it a 9. Pretty damn good though, all the way across the board. Brayflox. Let's do the long stop next. That's one of the 2 hard modes implemented in 2.2. If I'm comparing the dungeons to each other, I really, really liked Lost City of Amdapor, but Brayflox might be my favorite, and I didn't think it was going to be when we saw the screenshots, and it looked like they just put a bunch of shit in your way to make the path through the dungeon a little bit different. But it might be my favorite of the 3, battling up against Lost City. It's certainly the best to speed run for Soldiery, though.
Ooh, yeah.
Triel and I in Gamebreaker Nation last night realized we weren't capped, and we got capped in 2 hours. I mean, just 15-minute runs through there, and it's fun every single time. You know, I didn't feel like it was a chore like we've had in some of the original farming of instances for tomes. I was surprised that Square didn't use more real estate, though. The dungeon is really short, and it's closed off. I wanted to see that opened more, because there's obviously stuff there that you can see in the original Brayflox that we still don't have access to. So that seemed kind of weird, but other than that,
Brayflox Extreme, don't worry.
What's that?
Brayflox Extreme, don't worry.
I loved every single boss fight, so I'm just going to turn this one over to you.
Well, okay, so I'm going to break it down a little bit more. I think that they definitely encouraged you to explore a little bit more of the dungeon, even if it was still a little bit closed off. There's a treasure chest on top of a house. Like, I am somebody who likes to look around. I would have never thought to go on top of that house to find that treasure chest. And there's a lot of little nooks and crannies where you can get extra treasure coffers. There's a few extra enemies here and there. There's a few neat dungeon mechanics. Nothing too spectacular. Just the last boss shooting some things at you. The first boss, by the way, I love Bomberman, so there was a definite nod to Bomberman in the first boss. If that was not meant to be Bomberman, I don't know why they thought of that specific thing.
Yeah, if it wasn't meant to, then they just flat out stole it.
Yeah, because I was like, oh my god, it's Bomberman. Second and third boss, definitely liked seeing the remodeled things that they did to make everything more goblin-esque. And overall, it's just a fun, quick dungeon. And
it is.
Not only that, but I'm going to be seeing it for the next 36 hours while I farm 13,500 mythology points.
There you go. Yep, farming myth and soldiery. There you go. It's get a decent group. You could do it in a total of 5 to 6 pools in 15 minutes.
Yeah, you can. If you just want the mythos, you could just do the first.
Yeah, do the first
bosses.
two and then leave the damn thing. I got to if I gave Amdapor a 10 out of 10, and this is rivaling that for my favorite of the three, I'm gonna also give this one a 10 out of 10. I like the execution. It's fun. It's enjoyable. And most importantly, if I'm going to be running it over and over and over again as one of the primary farming things, it's quick.
The most important thing is quick, and you don't actually even need to do it quickly. It's just naturally a quick dungeon. So even if you're not speedrunning it, 20 minutes.
Yep, I'm gonna give it a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, I'll give it a 10 out of 10 as well.
So that brings up the last of the bunch. That's hard mode Halatali, which certainly looks much prettier than it used to.
Yes,
we've gone in there and cleaned it up. Seems like Square Enix was trying a few things out here mechanic wise, and I don't think all of them worked quite right, or at least maybe not the way they intended. Yeah, the first time through here, thank God we were in I-90 gear, because there were some mechanics that just didn't quite sync or work, or weren't obvious, or there was just something off with some of the boss fights in here to me.
Yeah, and I think of both the first and second boss. I think of the first boss and his supposed to insta-kill mechanic. And listen, I understand we need some time, but we don't need that much time to press the button and go stand next to something. I felt like that alone, you could kill half the boss in the time it took for him to use his strongest ability.
Yeah.
Even in I-70, I think you could have killed like half that boss in the time it took him to do one ability. And the second boss was not obvious at all what you had to do. But
and then even when you figured it out, the timing still was kind of funky on it. Sometimes you could get it to work, and sometimes you couldn't. I don't know. I loved the council fight at the end. To me, it was maybe a little too easy for the final boss of a hard mode, but I did like the idea of a council fight. I've liked those in other MMOs, so I would like to see some more of those going forward. I don't know. My score for Halatali, I think I got to give it a 6 or a 7. I'll go 7 because 6 just sounds a little low. It was fun. I did enjoy it. There's a few things in there that I don't know if they're bugs or if it's just I'm not quite doing them right because it's not quite giving me the right tips on what to do. So yeah, I'm going to give it a 7. To me, it's not one I'm going to run all the time. I'm probably going to run it when somebody needs it for something.
Yeah, I'm giving it a 7 too, mostly because I felt like there was a lot of emphasis on the look and not so much the execution, especially some of the simple things like the dropping of the spiked balls. Like, those are in such places that you should never even get near them. And the fact that they're considered mechanics of the dungeon seems a little bit loose to me. I feel like I think they should have actually, hate to say this, taken a book from Pharaoh Sirius and put it in your way and not off to the side where there's no reason you would go over there. And even then, it's like the size of your character model. So I felt like they tried a few things, didn't work. Still a quick dungeon, as quick as the other ones, maybe a little bit slower. Boss fights go quickly. Boss fights are easy, but they still have some mechanics. I'll give it a 7 out of 10.
So for scoring the entire boss fight or the entire new dungeons, that's all 3 as one content piece. How do we feel? I mentioned it earlier. I think Square Enix had a bit of difficulty here as far as tweaking the difficulty to actually make them hard modes. They seemed easier than 2.1's hard modes, but I think a lot of that is obviously that I was wearing lesser gear when I ran them on 2.1, and these are trying to be tweaked for a pretty wide gear set of people. So running in there with I-90 probably knocks the difficulty down for me automatically, and then the balancing across there, I don't know. It seems like it's a little bit of a concern going forward. If we're going to put the label hard mode on things, then we probably need to be a little more stringent on the gear requirements for those things. Overall, I got to give it a 9, though. They totally, in my book, nailed 2 of these. And the one that I'm thinking they didn't nail by an inch. It was very close. Yeah. I'll give it a 9 out of 10 as one content piece, all the new dungeons.
Yeah, I'll give it a similar score, a 9. One thing, and I want to speak on the balancing issue. I felt like they had a choice. They either had to make this drop meaningful gear for people who already had item level 90, and thus we have to worry about power creep, or they can just let Coil be their only power creep in the game for the time being. And they made an option that will prevent the item level from raising too much right away, which, you know, there are long-term ways to prevent item level from getting too high, and there are ways to fix it if it does ever get too high. But why make that a problem in the first place? The dungeons are quick. The dungeons are fun. They're definitely better designed, excluding Halatali, than Copperbell and Hawk were, if we're looking at just the hard modes.
Yeah.
And I feel that Amdapor thematically is more interesting and more fun than Pharaoh Sirius was, even if you went in with a good group that, you know, didn't automatically leave as soon as they saw that they were queued into it. So 9 out of 10. I think they definitely did what they needed to do to get these dungeons out there, to make them meaningful to the wide variety of people. If people are looking for a challenge, don't worry, what we'll be talking about soon, it's there for you.
Good point. Good point. All right, so on the next topic, I'm going to abstain a little bit here and not give a score from me. Although I know a bit about what's going on and some of the things because I'm keeping track of the whole world first races and all that stuff, and I've seen videos for certain things, I'm not going to score it because I haven't actually gone in and done it myself. So that would be a little unfair. So I'm still doing turn 5, so I'm not going to score, so I'm going to turn it over to you. Now, obviously there's stuff that I know you can't talk about because you and your free company are still doing your thing. And so, obviously, you don't give away anything you don't want to give away because you don't want you to talk about your strategies. But why don't we start here, and we'll also put the extreme modes in this category as well. You did publicly tell everyone that your free company down turn 6. I saw that on Facebook a little while ago. Give us some overall thoughts just on mechanics, atmosphere, the whole 9 yards for turn 6.
Well, one thing that's definitely a theme here is they seem to be going for less gear checks and more skill checks in the new Coil. One thing that definitely was more the theme in 2.0's Coil was, oh, well, yeah, you got all this down, but your gear's not good enough yet, so get out. 2.2 is less of that, but it really makes you have to perform as an individual in order for the entire group to succeed. There's very little, go stand there for the whole fight and just step to the left for this mechanic. There's very little of that. Everybody has to play an active role in everything. Tanks, healers, and DPS. Melee DPS have it a lot easier this time around. A lot of the time, they just have a very simple move out of melee range to dodge that. Maybe one of the mechanics that can hit anybody on the field can also target you. But it seems very fair between melee and range DPS, which was another big problem in 2.0. Also fair between healers and DPS and tanks and DPS. So everybody has to play an equal part. There is no one person who is going to help you get through this because they've done it before, other than telling you what's actually happening. There's also more story in these turns. The old Coil was basically, here's your story in turn 1, here's your story after you beat turn 5. Every single turn takes a step forward in the story, and it's a very interesting story at that. And overall, I'm just looking forward to seeing, you know, what people come up with. There's already a cheese way to beat turn 6. There is. You still have to get through the first 60% of the fight, but in the last 40%, there is a very cheesed method to get through it.
Do you think they're going to take it out, or do you think they're going to let it stand like they did turn 2?
I think they're going to leave it in because you have a very small window to execute it, and if you don't execute it in that small window, it's an instant wipe. It's not a bug, but it's a mechanic that is meant to wipe you, and there's a way to do enough damage to overwrite the mechanic and not have to and just circumvent an entire mechanic for the end of the phase. And it was designed that way to be done that way, and people are just using the limit break to help them get past it specifically.
Gotcha.
You have a 5-second window to perform it, basically, and if you do not perform
so there's still an element of player skill involved to achieve the cheese method. It's not total cheese like ADS in Rage.
And you have to make it through the first 2 phases of the fight.
Right.
So overall, I'm actually far more impressed with these Coil turns. And one very important thing, they tried to never reuse the same mechanic from the old content. They literally tried to be as original as possible, as thematic as possible with all of these fights, which to me is a very impressive thing. The areas are gorgeous. There's a little bit of motion sickness that might be a problem for some people in one of the turns, but it's very short-lived. And I am very much looking forward to doing this Coil for the next few months.
Did you guys down turn 7 yet, or can you say, I know some free companies have, and Blue Garter's even down turn 8 now publicly. Have you guys beaten 7?
We actually ran into some time constraints with people, and we didn't get as much time in there as we would have liked. So we did not, very close to it, but unfortunately, we just haven't had the time to go back in and fine tune the last little bit of it. So, and with that, of course, we haven't touched turn 8.
So look for that. Please look forward to it.
Please look forward to it. There we go.
So you kind of already touched on this, but are you getting the sense that these are more difficult than turn 5? Because that turn 5 kind of set the bar, and if you slip below that bar in subsequent turns now, the hardcore raiders, and then in a month or two, the normal raiders that are playing at my speed, we're going to be a little miffed about it. How's this difficulty curve going? Is it still a going up curve?
It's definitely a going up curve, and like I said before, less of a gear check. I'd say turn 5, one thing that definitely halted a lot of people was initially the gear check aspect of it. I'd say, like I said last week, I feel that the average item level of 82 was definitely an accurate thing for Square Enix to put on that for this patch. And I feel like there's less of that gear check. Gear, of course, makes anything easier. The more gear you have, the more damage you do, the quicker you get through the fight. For most people, it makes it easier, but you will definitely notice that some people, no matter how much gear they have, will completely wipe the group if they cannot perform. So it's a lot of things that are completely unforgivable. Nothing that's going to take you out of the fight permanently so far, but if you don't have the gear to make up for the lack of paying attention to the mechanics, then you're probably going to have a bad time.
Obviously, your score is probably going to change over time as you see more of these turns. But if you had to score it now on just turn 6 and what you guys have accomplished through turn 7 now, 1 through 10, what would it be?
I'd say a 10.
I'm that good?
Actually, I'm surprised at my own score, to be honest. It's just there's a lot of it's so much more skill reliant than it is just all of turns 1 through 5. The closest thing I could think of is turn 5, but turn 5 was, like I said, more of a gear check. Did you have the DPS to kill Conflag? Did you have the DPS to kill the Dread Knight? Could you survive Death Sentence? Yeah, then you were good to go. Could you dodge a dive bomb? That was the most difficult mechanic of all turn 5 in the end, after they nerfed Twisters, was dodging dive bombs. So if you can dodge dive bombs, you can dodge a ball, but still good luck to you in turn 6.
Dodge, duck, dip, dive, and dodge. Let's kind of lump the extreme modes in here real quick as some of the higher content, because to get to Extreme Leviathan or Extreme Moggle, you do have to complete Garuda Titan and Ifrit extreme modes, and then obviously the Leviathan hard mode, polish off the storyline so that you can get Leviathan extreme there. So Moggle, again, we talked about Council Fight, so I dig this. Interesting,
very good
fight. Mechanic as far as being able to damage King Moggle once you've reached phase 2 of this fight and onwards. Damn, you better have a group that knows what they're doing. I haven't beat it yet, so I hesitate to give it a rating, but from the combat that I have experienced, it's fun, I enjoy it, and the drops... Just looking at the loot table, the drops maybe don't make me want to run it all that often, but they do entice me to get in there a little more often than I did with the original, which is probably the right balance for this fight. I'm going to give it an 8 right now, and then once I've completed the fight, that probably will go up to a 9.
Yeah, it's fun, especially just like in the original, in the hard mode version of the fight, or the story mode, as I said we should be calling them now. There's a lot of humor to it, the fact that they're Moogles. There's definitely a lot of that going on. New mechanics, everybody's got to be paying attention, and there's a few and it's a very delicate balancing act, the entire fight. If one person's doing too much, it can actually cause you to wipe, and if one person's doing too little, well, at least the rest of everybody else can at least try and pick up the slack, though it probably won't go your way. Not too difficult of a fight. I definitely think it will be something that people can use the Party Finder for. 2D Finder, I'll reserve judgment till people have more gear. Once people have more gear, it probably won't be as bad. But I liked it. I'll give it a 9 out of 10.
Leviathan, for me, also gets a 9 out of 10. Again, I haven't beat it yet, but I've seen a lot of the mechanics. I called that there was going to be a one-shot mechanic where you could end up in the ocean. You doubted me. Let me just get that chip off my shoulder.
Listen, I still got the item levels right on
Yeah, you
stuff.
did. Yeah, you did. If you liked the hard mode version of it, but you thought it was way too easy, then you're just really going to like the extreme mode. It has the difficulty you're looking for. I can't think of anything I would have liked to have seen in this fight more, so I've got to give this one a 10 out of 10. Because I just can't think of anything. I think if they would have added one more thing, the fight would have become ridiculous at some point. Because there's a lot going on, but it's manageable. You just have to pay attention.
I give him. I was close to a 10. I gave him a 9. I feel like, despite him being very thematically cool, being a very, very visually appealing fight, despite the fact that once you've done it a few times, you notice that the ocean moves, but your boat doesn't. Well, during certain times, like, hey, giant tidal wave, my boat's perfectly still. Anyway, that took a little bit of points out of it for me. What has been seen cannot be unseen. And on top of that, this is tuned, I'm assuming, similarly to Garuda, Titan, and Ifrit, in the sense that those were given to us at item level 65, 67, and 70, and thus it's expected at being 10 item levels higher, you would beat the fight. This is the same way. 10 item levels higher is all you need to beat the fight. Difficulty-wise, it did not feel harder than the other 3 extreme primals, which I guess with the item level going up is fine considerably. But I feel like at item level 110, this fight will be extremely trivialized with some of their mechanic decisions. There are some mechanics you can just skip outright by having enough DPS, and at item level 90 already you can have that DPS. So I gave it a
but
9
it's a bit of a race still. It's not every group of I-90s is going to be able to push phases.
I'm saying when you look at it from, people like when the way that the original extremes were introduced, where people were, people who were already in the best gear, you could kill it extremely quickly, but you couldn't, if you were item level 80, you couldn't circumvent certain mechanics with enough DPS expectedly. But in this one already at 90, and people are going to be going up to 100, 110, the fight is going to be very much just kill a few adds and just beat the boss down very soon. So I took a point away from that.
Kudos. I mean, we bitch about a lot of stuff on this show because we're entitled gamers, just like the rest of
Of
chat.
course, Americans.
we're all entitled gamers, and the developers are doing it wrong. But we bitch a lot about certain things. I've got to give Square kudos on this one. I think they nailed the dungeons and fights and bosses and large full party, small light party content. I think they did a really solid job on this. You may think 1 or 2 fights is easier. Hildebrand, I mean, I don't want to get too much into that because the story is kind of funny and worth seeing for the first time. Gilgamesh was exactly as easy as Yoshi P indicated that it would be. But is also entertaining at the same time. So I think everything they nailed this one. They nailed it. They did really good. Everything to me scores at least a 7, and most of it's higher. So kudos for me. And now we get into some other stuff.
Yeah, I want to just throw one last thing. I feel like I can see what they've learned in the past 6 months, which is
agree.
Something that I don't really see in many other development companies, but I feel like a lot of other development companies hire experienced developers who aren't still learning. And it's something that you can't appreciate a lot in other MMOs. And this MMO, I feel like a lot of the developers had to completely relearn how to make and perform with more westernized games. And you can see what they've learned. If you go back and do Coil 1 through 5, and then you do Coil 6 through 9, you will gradually see, if you do the content from 2.0 to 2.2, what they've learned and how they've learned to implement it. There's still some kinks to be worked out here and there. So I do give them kudos, and more so because they are actually learning, and that will, in the future, especially come expansion time, definitely make the game more interesting to see what they can create, because they have also great creativity. So if they can nail down the mechanics and the content itself and add on top of the creativity they have, they'll nail it every time.
We've got a lot more to cover in patch 2.2, but before we cover some of the other stuff remaining, oh no, I gotta tell you about a sponsor of ours, and that would be Audible. So happy to have them as a sponsor. If you're not a member of Audible, check it out. Use this URL, www.audible.com/gamebreaker. You use that URL, you're going to get a free 30-day trial and a free audiobook. Now, there's no Final Fantasy books on there just yet, but this coming weekend, you're probably watching Game of Thrones. And if you haven't read the books, to jump ahead and figure out what's coming and what the show is doing different than the books, well, here you go. If you don't like the Lost City of Amdapor music, 1, there's something wrong with you. But 2, you could turn it down and have a listen to Game of Thrones by George R.
Books
R.
on Tape
Martin.
presents
Take a listen.
A Game of Thrones, Book 1 of A Song of Ice and Fire, by George R. R. Martin, read by Roy Dotrice. Prologue. "We should start back," Garrett urged as the woods began to grow dark around them. "The wildlings are dead." "Do the dead frighten you?" Sir Waymar Royce asked with just the hint of a smile. Garrett did not rise to the bait. He was an old man, past 50, and he had seen the lordlings come and go. "Dead is dead," he said.
I love when these narrators really, really get into it and they decide to start making voices for the characters. Great service. This is one of those things I listen to when I fate grind. Yeah, we'll get to that in a minute. So if you're like me grinding those fates and you want to have something else to listen to, check it out. www.audible.com/gamebreaker. Give you a free month and a free book. Check it out. So happy to have them on as a sponsor. Moving on, let's talk about, very briefly, the Glamour system. Again, previous shows I told you this wasn't something that I'm really, really into. I kind of like the way the post-80 gear sets start to look. The post-eye-level 80 gear sets start to look. So I'm not really that into it. I mean, I did the quest to unlock it and get the prisms, and it's going to be nice to craft them so that you can make a little bit of money through that. Some of the Game Breaker Nation peeps that are really, really into this type of stuff, constantly redoing their character and their hair and all that stuff with the new hairstyles, they kind of mentioned that it seemed a little more complicated than it needed to be, the whole process to glamour an item, when you've got games like Rift that you just open up a wardrobe tab, thunk some things in, and it's done, which I enjoy that. So this does seem a little more complex. You guys feeling the same thing?
Yeah, I mean, the whole prism thing, the process. When I first heard the prism thing, I was like, "Oh, that's not so bad." And it's not horrible, but it's tacked on. It really should. I mean, there should just be an NPC you can go to buy prisms. Just flat out done with prisms. They didn't need to implement it in any way into the crafting economy. It's not going to be something that helps it long term. So, I don't know. I feel like it could have been so much simpler, and I feel like in the future it may be, but for the time being, this is what we have. And some of the things people are doing with it are hilarious. I party findered a tank for Brayflox, and I thought it was Reinhardt for a second because he was almost completely naked, but he had all his gear on at the same time. So,
what? Are you surprised by this?
I'm surprised at how much people are, because when I still, as it's restrictive as I think it still is, it is less restrictive than I thought it was going to be. I thought that a lot of things like snowman outfits and being half naked and even though you can't use the Odin body piece, the head and the sword are still great vanity pieces that can be used, especially the sword, which is basically like a lightsaber.
In the end, it does what it's supposed to for me. It's nothing great. I'm just going to give it a 6. It does what it's supposed to. I think it's a little more complex than it actually needed to be, and I think that's because they tried to shoehorn another area for crafting to try and become a little more relevant. So I'm just going to give it a 6.
I'll give it a 7 because I've seen some people that are just doing hilarious things with it, especially with the Manderville dance.
Great emote. Great emote. When my Ellison, who's like 9 feet tall, does it, it's fantastic. Fantastic. All right. Happy. I think we've avoided the topic as long as we can, because if we don't cover it, then we're idiots. And I'm sure we probably have a little difference of opinion here and there on this one, but we really got to talk Zodiac Weapon Quest.
Let's do it.
I'm very, very torn on this. Very torn. Because I think they were this close to getting this right across the board, from top to bottom. We asked for, when we talked about way back when, the original Relic Quest, we asked for, 1, the the relic to be more difficult to obtain because we thought it should have a higher, they got the relic
value.
Yep, higher value, and we're Final Fantasy XI babies like that. We thought it should be a little harder to obtain. We thought it should take longer to obtain. We also have talked about how Square Enix could potentially drive open world content into being bigger. And these are all things.
Is what you're saying?
Yeah, we're definitely responsible for a big portion of this. So if you don't know what I'm talking about here, currently there are 2 quests, one after the other, to upgrade your relic weapon to first an Atma weapon, which all it does is changes the glow of your relic weapon, and then the Animus weapon, which through that long quest line you will upgrade individual stats on your Atma weapon until you've completed it, and it's the Animus weapon. This quest line will then continue in future patches to even upgrade the relic further and further and further. Can we talk? Are you all right if we talk about the second quest first?
I'm on the second quest, so I would love to talk about it.
So you're on the second quest. The second quest, and Happy's mentioned it earlier, he's farming 13,500 myth. 13,500 mythology. And the reason he's doing that is in that phase of the quest, you have to purchase books. You can purchase books one at a time. They are 1,500 myth, and then the books subsequently have you do some other things to upgrade one stat on your weapon. You farm up 1,500 myth, you go get the second book, you follow the rules, you upgrade the second, and you work your way through 9 books. To me, this one is perfect.
Yes.
This one is done perfectly. And I know that a lot of people don't like the grinding aspect of having to get that many myth, but I'm okay with it because from the beginning to the end, you have a constant feeling of progression. A constant, I'm 1 book in, I'm 2 book in, I need 800 more myth, then I can get book 3. All right, now I've done book 3, I'm done, I got that stat, now let me go and farm some myth. There's constantly a feeling of moving forward. Yes, it's going to take time. Yes, you're probably going to be bored with some of the dungeons because it is inherently a grind, which a lot of people don't like. But to me, from start to finish, there's at least that feeling of I'm constantly moving forward on this quest. It may take me 3 months the way I play, but I'm constantly moving forward. I don't have too much of a problem with that one. You're on it right now. What are your thoughts?
It's quick. It's easy. You kill 100 enemies. You do 3 dungeons. It could be any dungeon. Like I had to do Tamtara, Stone Vigil, which I needed my Glamour bow from anyway. I didn't get it. And Lost City of Amdapur. Then I'm on my second book now. I have to do Brayflox normal. I have to do Wanderer's Palace. I have to do Copperbell hard mode. So you have to beat the last boss. They're easy. Kill 100 enemies, simple enough. Teleport around. The specific leaves are really easy to do. You might have to XIV DB maybe to figure out which NPC gives them, but they're really quick to get. The fates there's still more fates here. You need to do 3 specific fates. Some of them I feel like might be bugged on their spawn times, but it's simpler to know, hey, I do this fate, I will be done with this part of my book. As long as I wasn't in the bathroom for 30 seconds when it spawned, I will be done with it right now, which has happened to me after 5 hours. But anyway,
and that's kind of my point, is that you can look at, okay, I need 800 more myth so I can go get the book. I'm going to be playing for 2 hours tomorrow. I could definitely get 800 myth and then roll through that. There's a constant feeling of moving forward with this. Again, you may not like grind, and if you don't like grind, then this entire thing isn't for you at all.
Yeah,
I'm okay with grind as long as I feel like I'm progressing. And the second portion, I think, does it nicely. And for those of us that get maybe a little more playtime, like Happy, you get a lot more playtime than I do. Hell, that second part isn't going to take you very long at all because you can get 1,500 myth like this.
Well, I had a friend who did the math. If it takes you 8 minutes to get 50 myth, it would take you 36 hours of straight grinding on mythology to get the mythology required for it. So looking forward to that.
So let's go to the first quest, which is one that a lot of people are still on, including myself. You have to gain what they call 12 different pieces of Atma, and they're different names, Atma of the Bull, Atma of the Scorpion, things like that. They have an extraordinarily low drop rate, so we're playing an RNG or random number generation game, whether you get it or not. Very, very low drop rate. And they drop from fates in specific zones. So you go to Southern Thanalin, you can farm any fate you want as long as you have the quest and your Zenith Relic equipped. You farm any level fates you want. and have a chance at completing these to actually get a piece of Atma. Get all 12 from 12 different zones, turn them in, the Zenith becomes the Atma weapon. I'm even okay with the RNG here. Because you and I, again, Final Fantasy XI babies, man. Listen,
if I were to complain about this, I might as well just go back and redo 7 years of my life.
I'm fine with the RNG. It may be a little low for my taste, but I'm also used to that from Final Fantasy XI and from other games as well. So I can deal with RNG. My huge issue here is that we have now combined RNG with Fates, which I think was a terrible decision. There is nothing in the game, and I'm a Fate grinder. I'll go and I'll level subsequent classes doing nothing but Fates. Hell, I put out a video on how to get 1 through 30 in a number of hours and what Fates are best to grind to do it, just to burn through the content pre-dungeons having all the bonuses they have now. So I'm a Fate grinder. I'll do it, but there is nothing more freaking boring to do at level 50 than Fates. There is nothing fun about it.
I wish Odin was automatic Atma for all 12 Atma.
There's no new Fates, so you're going back and doing the same ones you had to, which means since all the people are farming these, you get into situations where not only am I playing an RNG game, but I'm sitting around waiting to play the RNG game because there's no Fates in the damn zone, and nothing's popping. So it's infuriating that I'm being forced to go do the most boring thing for me to do at level 50. I can't switch classes so that I can say, you know what, at least I can level an alternate class while I'm doing this. You're getting Gil, yes, I've heard this argument. You're getting Gil and Seals.
You're getting enough Gil to teleport to the other zones.
Yeah, you're getting a couple Gil here and some Seals so that you can maybe go buy some Philo items and sell them on the auction house if you want to. Great, it's not a lot of Gil to write home about. I want to level my Chocobo. Okay, but with the groups that are doing these things right now, your Chocobo gets to touch 1 or 2 things before it dies. So it's not an effective way to grind your Chocobo out either. There's literally no benefit other than having this extraordinarily low chance to get the Atma off of doing content is the last content you want to be doing at 50. That said, I don't know if I can blame them.
You know why they're doing this, right?
We have a PS4 launch coming up.
There you go.
In 2 weeks. A little less than 2 weeks now. And now, all of a sudden, the open world looks really freaking busy.
Yeah, and the beta's this Friday, and it will be on the live servers.
And that's why I don't know if I can blame them for this.
Mm-hmm.
Where else could you have put the RNG game, which I already said I don't mind playing? Could you put it in dungeons? Well, shit, man. Now I got to run a 45-minute dungeon just to have an extraordinarily low chance at getting the Atma. That's going to make me want to kick kids around the house. You know, where else could you have put this range? So the only thing I can come up with is I think there should have been dedicated Fates to this.
I thought there was initially because by a stroke of luck, my first Atma I got in Western Lenosha on the old 6 arms, which was a crab. So I was like, oh, we just have to do specific Fates, and then we'll be all right. And then it started.
Chad, if you don't know, and I've seen the question, I know I said it at the beginning, so I'll say it again. RNG, Radio Night Gale, sure, that's not correctly key spelled, but you get the point, is random number generator. When you destroy the Fate, in the back end of the system, a random number is generating, and if that number happens to fall in a threshold that's predefined, you get a drop. It'll ping, you get the Atma. If it doesn't, you don't. So imagine if the span is 1 to 100, and the code says, if 99 or 100, drop Atma. Random die roll means 98 times out of 100 you're not going to get the Atma. And guess what? I don't think the drop rate's that high. That would be a 2% drop rate. I don't think it's that high. I don't think it's that high. And here's the real bitch of it though. The rules weren't even really made clear as to how this was going to work. For instance, the quest text has bad translations in it, pointing to zones that don't exist.
Or the same zone twice, and then...
Right?
I had a friend who farmed Central Thanalan for 5 hours, got 3 of the same Atmas. Like, where's the other one?
Right. The rules aren't even made clear. The quest text is not translated well in some areas.
What if retainers can get Atmas?
It took us a while to figure out on the forums. It was, do we really have to have the Zenith weapon equipped to do this? Because then it enters into play. Well, at least we can level an alternate class while we're doing this. Get some sort of side perk out of this bad boy. And then when it was figured out, okay, well now do I have to get gold or can I get silver? Can I get bronze? Can I get an Atma off a failed fate? A lot of these questions, by the way, are still unanswered officially.
Some people have been saying, I've gotten it on bronze or silver. I've never gotten it. I don't believe you. I'm sorry. There's a lot. And I had a friend who was worried about one thing. He glamoured his Zenith to something else, and he didn't see it drop for 12 hours. So he was wondering if even glamouring your Zenith to something else, so you don't have to stare at it for all that time, what's affecting it. He eventually did get it, thankfully, but there's a lot of questions like that haven't been answered.
And that's why I'm torn. Just from top to bottom, I'm torn on this. Because the second half, I think, is done beautifully. There's a lot. It definitely does everything we bitched about in the past. When you get that Animus weapon, you're going to be like, mother, I got the Animus weapon.
Time to work on my second one.
Exactly. You are going to feel good when you get that bad boy. Because I don't know about you, but when Atma drops right now, I'm like, yeah, break out the Coke. Let's go. Yeah, party. And so you're going to feel good when you complete it. There's some people that are getting really freaking lucky. A couple of people in Game Breaker Nation are already on the second portion as well. I've farmed Fates for probably a total of, I don't know, maybe about 30 hours total since 2.2 came out. I have 4. There's a lot of unanswered questions here. It hits so many points we made over the last couple of months that it's hard to fault them for this. But I really got to fault them for hiding it in the content that is the most boring for level 50s to do without giving some other side perk to at least doing it.
Other than venture chips and philosophy tokens.
Other than that type of stuff. Do you think there's any merit to the argument on the forums that specific choice alone is going to cost Square Enix subscribers in the long run?
Not a lot, but it will cost them some. I have a firm belief. The people who eventually realize that I don't have to do this, this is another option, they will definitely...
Come on, the game's PvE centric. If you have the PvP is terrible, right? So it's PvE centric. If you're going to raid in any capacity, you want this weapon.
But for a lot of people, the item level 100 version is not even better than a tidal wave weapon, which is the item level 95 Leviathan plus the mirror. Mirror is a very rare drop, by the way. I haven't seen it in 50 kills in the entire free company. But there are alternate methods to get weapons out there. You can even go as far as just beating turn 7, getting an unidentified Allegan Tombstone. I know that doesn't seem that feasible right now, but after a few weeks when people have gotten a little bit more gear from turn 6, from farming out soldiery, it will be feasible. And I have a feeling that a lot of people are going to skip this altogether. At some point, this is going to get nerfed. I can tell you that right now.
Definitely.
And there's one very clear hint towards it. For the first time, I've never seen them do this before. Maybe you have. Every single post that was about Atma farming, they consolidated them and are watching it carefully.
Yeah, it's definitely going to get the nerf. Probably between 2.25 and 2.3, there's going to be a nerf to the drop rate. I feel kind of used, right? I feel like I'm being used as a PlayStation 4 advertisement. And it's like, look at how busy our open world is. Because it's all these 50s running around with relics on their backs, beating up fates in level 6 zones. I don't know. To me, I don't give it as credit for being as optional as a lot of people like yourself do. Because if you're a raider, which is predominantly what this game is, you want that weapon. I'm sorry. Not only, yes, it may not be the best weapon for you to be equipping right now, but the last thing you want to do is roll into 2.3 and 2.4 and beyond and still be way back here at the initial portion of the quest. So you want to do this now, even though you may not use the end resulting weapon right now based on the stats. Yes, it's optional. I know, but I don't give it as much credit as you do for being optional. To me, it's not as optional as some people make it out. We got to score it because we really got to move on. We're running long.
Can we just move on without scoring?
No, we got to score it. We got to score it.
We need some vodka for this.
I'm torn.
No, you're not.
I am, because this hits so many good points of what we've wanted for the last 4 months on different topics. But I've got to give this a 4. I have to, because I think Fates was the absolute worst choice they could have done. If they wanted to do Fates, create new
Guild
Fates
Hests.
that are specific to this, or use Guild Hests, something.
But it was Guild Hest, and it was the same drop rate.
I'd almost prefer that, because then at least I could just stand in one zone and constantly queue and watch some Netflix on the other side, rather than have
I'm
to
doing
be
that
running,
anyway.
running around the zone.
I accidentally paid for Amazon Prime for a year, so I have...
Let me break my score down like this, then. I give that Atma portion a 4 out of 10.
That's that much?
The overall portion, the overall Zodiac questline so far, I'll give a 7 to an 8 to, because I think it does knock out a lot of the problems we had with the original Relic and a lot of what we talked about with open world. So it addresses an awful lot of player concerns, but that one decision just sucked. That's the only thing I don't like about it.
I'll overall give it a 6 out of 10. It's kind of in between where you are. I'm not breaking it apart. The Atmas, I made the Atmas a sort of a game almost. You know, get on Mumble, joke around with a few people, maybe play some music, watch something. But the thing is, I'm doing anything but play the game while I'm playing the game. Is the way that I looked at it. And then the second part hasn't been bad at all. It goes really, really quickly. The longest part is the mythology grind. And unless you've got terrible, terrible luck, that will be the longer portion of the quest, especially considering how many runs you have to do. 270 dungeons, even if it's only the first half of them, is a lot, especially considering how much mythology doesn't drop everywhere else now. So I'll give it a 6 out of 10 so far. If I got my wave weapon today, want to try and get my tidal wave weapon. It's better than my animus weapon anyway, so I'm looking for that.
All right, so finally, before we put the total scores together here, we really should talk about an item that is currently undergoing massive review, according to all the forum posts from the dev team, and that's the server stability. Because right now, I don't know about you, but on Behemoth and on the forums and everywhere, it started with the instance servers post 2.2 becoming very rubber bandy and very laggy. And last night was the first time I saw it leak into the world servers themselves now. There's a real lag and stability issue going on post 2.2, and they've addressed it a few times that they're working overnight to try and come up with solutions and figure out what's going on. Are you seeing it with your free company too?
I've seen it in 1 or 2 dungeon runs. I've not seen it out in the open world, but I know people who have been seeing it out in the open world. I've experienced it very, very little, and today I didn't experience it at all, and I ran, quite a few dungeons, a lot of extremes even. I'm not seeing it. I can definitely see. I saw the problem twice, and both times I was like, if that's happening to people more than every half an hour, I would start getting kind of pissed off.
Oh, every half an hour? I queued up for random
I'm
trial
saying,
yesterday.
I'm saying half an hour is my threshold.
And got Ifrit hard mode, and in the fight, it was undodgeable. The lag was so bad on it that the charge move, when there's 3 of him, the sound effect there was no space between the sound effect. It just went and all 3 took off. I mean, and they just gunned at the same time. It's really bad in some areas. And yesterday, like I said, was the first time I'd seen it in the open world, but it was really bad. Running with Brayflox over and over again with some of Game Breaker Nation, we were on Mumble, and the tanks go, all right, I'm pulling. And the tank's just standing there. And then he's
at the boss, and he's already
and then
hit
the
it
boss
like
is 5% in, yeah. So again, the condition of the servers coming to light again, that, the architecture isn't quite there for what we're trying to do. When they launched 2.2, they also launched a restructure of the instance servers to try and create more instances. But man, some of the dungeons they're just unplayable. This has to get fixed quickly, because this will cost you subscribers very quickly.
One thing that was weird to me is they said they want to try and alleviate the issue while not kicking players off of the game. At this point, you might as well kick people off the game and just fix it.
I don't know about chat, but I'll tell you right now, give me some emergency maintenance. If you think that bringing it down and when you're done, it's going to be fixed, bring on the emergency maintenance. I'll go play Elder Scrolls. Any other portion of the patch? Any other portion of the patch you want to score before we put a final score on this? I think we covered most of the big key items.
Gardening is like a non. It's like a
Yeah,
non-thing anymore.
It wasn't even worth scoring.
It's not even. It's like, why'd you even put that in the trailer? It's like, yeah, we put the patch there. I don't know if any. I think people are peeing on it. I don't know. I don't know. I can't even score it. It's that like non-existent to me.
Yeah. All right, so let's move on to final score. To remind everybody, Mr. Happy, you scored patch 2.1 as an 8 overall in our Ultimate Patch 2.1 review episode. I scored patch 2.1 at a 9. Where does patch 2.2 stack up for you? Final patch score.
8.
Going with the same as 2.1.
Same as 2.1.
I'm going to go and give patch 2.2... I'm going to go an 8 too, which means I liked 2.1 just a little bit more. And I love a lot of
sense.
I love a lot of the things that 2.2 implemented, but the story was a little weaker because it was setting things up. The hard modes weren't, hard if you were wearing relevant gear to the end of 2.1. The lag is an issue. The fate decision weighs into that a little bit. Not a lot, because I realize why they made those decisions, as I mentioned. But I've got to give it an 8, so it's just slightly not on par with 2.1. But I will say this. As far as being fun, everything besides the Zodiac weapon quest is. They absolutely nailed content, even if you disagree with difficulty. They nailed it.
Yeah, and I almost feel like it's, I am more the person who wants to, rail through content, and you're more the person who likes to go at your own pace. I felt like,
Yep.
just even hearing your score, I feel like it makes more sense that you would like 2.1 better, because 2.1 was more suitable to the average player who's not just trying to plow through the hardest content. Whereas this is more of a, sure, you can work towards it, you'll get it done eventually, but it's not like it was in 2.1, where you pretty much can appreciate all of the content right away and still work towards your old goals. These are all brand new goals. Working towards your old goals is not really a thing outside of Turn 5 and Ifrit Extreme. And once you do them once, you probably won't do them again. So I think generally we can expect 2.3 to be, it's pretty much going hardcore, casual, hardcore, casual, hardcore, casual, in my opinion. Which is fine for me because it means that every patch somebody's got something to do.
I do have to give a shout out here. I'm trying to find the names because we were talking, a bunch of us were talking, some Gamebreaker Nation peeps and just peeps that follow me on Twitter. We were talking off and on all day about the Zodiac weapon quest. So let me pull up the name here because I do have to give a shout out. And I've seen this on the forums too, where some people were talking about even Yoshi P doesn't like this type of a farm or something like that. Let me find... Where is it? So they were quoting the 4Gamer interview where Yoshi P did talk about drops and things like that. And this comes from, I asked them to look it up because I couldn't find it, Prissy Price on Twitter and Zunmai on Twitter. So Michelle and Priscilla, thank you. Shout out. So we were finding links and going back and forth. And yes, it does kind of allude to the fact that Yoshi P doesn't like that whole drop too, but it also says we're going to be implementing this type of stuff in the future because it caters to both types of players that we're looking to cater to. So if you're trying to use Yoshi P as the argument, cool, but you should probably read the rest of that interview too, where he said back on March 20th, we are going to be implementing that type of stuff. Speaking of Yoshi P, will the real Yoshi P please stand up? It's April Fool's Day, so on the forum, starting yesterday, since April 1st happened in Japan, everybody on the forums became Yoshi P. So now we all show up as Naoki_Yoshida. They've even encouraged some producers' letters to be posted if you want to. From the official forums, it says, "Welcome to the official forums, very own special letter from the producer, featuring a number of familiar faces." Well, actually, just one face on everybody's post. "For a limited time, you and everyone you know has the demeanor, the manner, the mode, and more importantly, the name of our venerated producer, director, Naoki Yoshida. So now's your chance. Be the producer you've always wanted to be by writing your very own letter from the producer below. Keep in mind that you still have to follow the forum rules and be nice, but you are allowed to impersonate a Square Enix employee. Have fun living the dream, as this assuredly won't last forever." So on that note, the dev blog teased this little guy here. We're getting a favor system.
That
where
was
where you
that
can
was
court some
unbelievable.
NPCs.
That was so fun. The funniest thing is that it's like exploding demand for. It's like a business plan.
Yeah, I like the number of people that are like, wait, they really need to
Oh.
implement this. This should not be an April Fool's joke. This needs to be implemented immediately.
Yeah, and then you see Garuda, and
Yeah, Garuda's down there as one of them. Did you write one, Mr. Happy? Did you write a producer's letter?
no. After
didn't
I
yet
saw,
either.
I saw this one. I was like, I was. Now you know what? This was on the dev blog. This should have just been the special live letter. This right here, because
Yeah.
nobody's gonna top this.
To
especially not-
wrap it up, to wrap the show up, because we're running extra long today. Good thing we didn't have 3 hosts. I almost did.
Yeah.
This one's posted by Naoki Yoshida. Greetings, everyone.
Wow, you don't say.
Greetings, everyone. Yoshi P here. Thought I would let you know that we have decided to implement for 2.3. Since we have an overwhelming positive response to the fate grinding for Zodiac weapons, we will be implementing XP debt. That's right, when you die, you'll lose experience, de-leveling as an added bonus. For content, we'll be adding a paper farm to defeat the one and only Red Mage Matt. That's right, a blast from the past. We'll also be adding from Final Fantasy XI the Chains of Promathia expansion as an early expansion released at no cost to you. This will be an exciting adventure coming, I promise. Well, that's it for now. I thought that was brilliant if you were a Final Fantasy XI player. Absolutely great. Check it out. It's a lot of fun there. We're having on the forums there. Gotta love it. Let's do some viewer questions and call it a day. So Jose wants to know how many myth and soldiery tomes drop in a CT. Too lazy to go to CT. I don't think we need to throw this around. It's 100 myth and 10 soldiery.
Oh, is it? Because I sure as hell didn't know.
Chris wants to know the grind seems to be the theme for 2.2 content. Will last longer, but will this lead to an increased time between patches?
No.
You don't think so?
They've given us a pretty solid plan. The only patch I'm expecting there to be a delay between is the patch before the expansion. I'm expecting that it won't be patched 3 months, because then that only gives people 3 months to experience all the content that was in the prior patch. So I expect that will have a longer delay, but not every single patch. I'm still expecting we're en route for June, and then what is it? July, August, September, October, November, December for those 3 patches, and then I think around March we'll probably get March of next year we'll get our last patch for the expansion, and then by the end of summer we'll have the expansion. That's my overall predictions, but I think we're going to be staying on track.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to delay it much either. Although if they can't fix this server stuff very quickly, that could cause more of a delay than the grinding of the content.
Just like it
itself.
did upon the launch.
Because if they can't go into another patch and have this happen. If it becomes an every patch thing, you'll lose subscribers like that. Nick Baker, Niabari, Game Breaker Nation officer on the XIV. Thoughts on spoilers in the new fan kit wallpaper on Binding Coil T5 cinematic?
I saw that today, and I was
Yeah.
like, why did you do that?
Yeah, I kind of wondered that too. I don't know.
Well, I mean, I guess at this point it's been 7 months.
I mean, at some point they're going to have to show it, right? I mean, it's...
I mean, listen,
They
I'm
wanted to
surprised
use
they
it.
showed us. I'm surprised they showed us as much of 2.2's Coil in the trailer as they did.
Yeah.
With how secretive they were in 2.0, but I think that's just because they've learned that, hey, not telling you guys anything about the content, bad idea. Yeah, I mean, I don't really
It
have any
didn't
thoughts on
bother
it
me,
other
but I
than-
was definitely surprised to see it there.
Yeah, that's where I was too.
But to me, it's kind of like I'd already seen it anyway through other videos. The end cinematic. Obviously, I've seen the start cinematic for the T5 fight. But the end cinematic, I think I saw it first on one of your videos. And so I know what's going on, so it didn't bother me, but I guess I could see
As long as it's not a turn 9 spoiler, because oh my goodness.
Shut up. Michael Bruin, final question. How many hours do you and Happy play per day? I've always wondered this.
Well,
I'll go first. I have a wife and 3 kids and a day job. So my Final Fantasy, I do work from home, so I can pop in for the occasional knockout dailies early and stuff, but I pretty much play at night and on weekends. Per day, during the weekday, maybe 2 to 4 if I'm feeling like I want to stay up till 2 or 3 in the morning because I don't get on until later. Saturday and Sunday, if I've got no theater stuff going on and nothing with the kids, I may do 4 to 6 here and there. So not a ton. Happy, you do this as some of a source of income, so I'd imagine your numbers are much higher.
Well, I mean, realistically, I spend a lot of my mornings going through videos, writing up, what I'm going to do for the week. I do spend quite a bit of time not playing the game, especially during the earlier half of the day. I usually actually don't maybe start playing for real until the late afternoon, anywhere between 3 to 5 p.m. So, but I play and I actually go to sleep pretty early, or at least I try to. So, 6-7 hours a day, maybe, depending on how far into a patch we are. Sometimes I won't even log in for a day if, I'm so far ahead of everything that I only log in for Coil or something like that. But right now, 6 hours a day is a good place for me to be.
Mr. Happy Michael Poveromo. Follow him on Twitter at Mr. Happy1227. And if you're not following him everywhere else, he will be sure to hit you on Twitter with his newest videos when he's streaming, and you can follow him everywhere. I'm Mike Byrne, aka Magic Man. You can follow me at MagicMan1. That's MAGICKMANN1. And obviously, follow at GameBreaker TV for the latest and greatest on all of our podcast shows, video shows, and gaming news. Until next time, gang, put your review score in the comments below and tell us why. Stay safe. We'll see you on the servers.